There is a type of success that comes at a high cost. It is admired, validated, applauded, but it demands too high a price, the distancing from one's own truth. In the name of this success, many people build solid careers, seek recognition, accumulate achievements, and in the midst of it all, something essential begins to unravel. It is not visible, it is not immediate, but it is real. The bond with one's own identity starts to break. The modern world offers many ready-made paths, life models that seem to work, goals that seem universal. But every time one enters this game without questioning, there is a risk that, upon achieving what was desired, the feeling is not one of victory, but rather of estrangement. An internal misalignment, difficult to explain, that does not always find space to be named. Carl Jung did not speak of success in the way we are accustomed to. For him, true triumph was not conquering the external world, but preserving the integrity of the soul while walking. And when this integrity is compromised, it does not matter how many steps are climbed. Something inside remains suspended, fragmented, waiting for reconciliation. It is not about rejecting the world, nor romanticizing escape. It is about reclaiming the center, about feeling true in one's own decisions again, about remembering that success that demands self-betrayal is, at best, a poorly negotiated good deal. The question is not just, what have you achieved, but who did you have to stop being to get here? This video is an invitation to pause, not to give up the journey, but to redirect it. It is a conversation with those who have already realized that there are voids that applause cannot fill, and with those who sense, even if vaguely, that there is still something essential waiting to be rescued. Without formulas, without ready-made answers. Just one direction. Return to oneself, without fear of abandoning what was never yours. You might even think you are in control, but stop and think. How many of your recent decisions were truly yours? How many times did you say yes when you wanted to say no? How many times did you accept compliments for achievements that deep down didn't even touch you? There is a huge difference between living and performing a life. And many people, perhaps you included, are stuck in a role they have learned to play so well that they no longer know where the performance ends and the truth begins. This is what Jung referred to as identification with the persona. And here we are no longer talking about a theoretical concept. We are talking about everyday life, the way you behave at work, with friends, with family. How you calibrate your words to seem professional, pleasant, mature. How you mold your emotions to fit situations, even when everything in you wants to overflow. Constantly performing is exhausting. But more than that, it is alienating. You start to build relationships based on the image you project, not on the essence you carry. And then, no matter how surrounded you are by people, you begin to feel lonely. Because you realize that no one knows who you really are. And perhaps you don't know anymore either. The disconnection from the self doesn't happen overnight. It settles in gradually. It starts with small concessions. You swallow an annoyance here, accept an expectation there. You begin to measure your words, to edit your spontaneity. And one day you wake up with the feeling that life is passing by without you in it. And here lies the danger. The world will continue to applaud your performance. It will keep rewarding you, promoting you, praising you for being on the right track. But no one will notice the hole that is opening up inside you, because that hole is silent and socially acceptable. As long as you remain functional, no one will question your pain. But it is there, and it manifests itself in anxiety crises for no clear reason, in sleepless nights, in an emptiness that not even success can fill. And the truth is harsh but necessary. If you keep performing, you will forget how to be yourself. And when that happens, nothing remains, just a productive body, empty of soul. So before you completely lose yourself, it's time to take a pause, A brutally honest pause to ask yourself, who is this version I am presenting to the world, and who is being suffocated inside me for it to exist? And that's where we enter the next part. When success, this ideal so pursued, becomes the trap that distances us from who we really are. Let's expose this dynamic and show how it captures you without you realizing it. Shall we? If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. You have been conditioned from an early age to believe that success is synonymous with fulfillment, that all you need to do is earn the diploma, secure a stable job, achieve financial independence, and everything will fall into place. But no one told you that it's possible to achieve all of this and still feel lost, because the success that the world offers rarely aligns with what your soul needs. The problem isn't success itself. The problem arises when it becomes the only criterion for measuring the value of your life. When it turns into an external goal that consumes everything, your time, your energy, your choices, your relationships, you start sacrificing parts of yourself to get there. And the closer you get to that there, the more you realize that perhaps there isn't even a destination, just an endless race. Carl Jung was direct in saying, "The unlived life is a disease from which one can die." This statement may seem radical, but think about what it's really saying. How many people do you know who followed all the steps in the playbook and still live emotionally unwell? With recurring crises, broken relationships, a constant feeling that something is wrong? This is not a coincidence. It is the direct result of an existence disconnected from one's own essence. Success based solely on external goals comes at a high price. It demands that you mold yourself to environments that do not always welcome who you truly are. That you accept journeys that crush your creativity, your sensitivity, your spontaneity. And all of this is sold as professional growth. But what no one talks about is that for many people, this growth comes at the cost of internal erosion. You climb the ladder, but perhaps it's leaning against the wrong wall. And then you find yourself trapped because you've already invested too much time to give up. You've built an image that you need to uphold. You've made so many concessions that turning back seems impossible. And this is how success becomes a trap. It locks you into a life you cannot abandon without feeling like you've failed. But true failure isn't changing course. Failure is continuing on a path that empties you just because it works on paper. Failure is becoming someone you don't recognize just to maintain appearances. Failure is ignoring all the internal signs that something is wrong simply because the world outside says you're doing well. The good news is that there's still time, but only if you have the courage to face the truth head-on. Success without alignment with the self is a subtle form of self-sabotage. And the sooner you realize this, the more chances you have to start over from a more authentic place. The question now is, how can you know in practice that you are losing yourself? What are the concrete signs that your soul is being silenced by your lifestyle? This is what we will explore in the next part. We will bring this disconnection to the real, everyday level, where it begins silently to corrode you from within. You won't wake up one day and clearly realize that you've lost touch with who you are. The disconnection from the self doesn't announce itself with sirens. It arrives slowly, with subtle signs, camouflaged in the everyday. And that's precisely why it's so dangerous. By the time you notice, you've already been living for months, sometimes years, as an edited version of yourself, designed to function but incapable of feeling. So how can you know if this is already happening to you? Start by observing your decisions. How many of them are made with internal conviction? And how many are based on the fear of disappointing, of stepping out of line? of losing something that others deem important. When you say, "I want this," does that desire come from your core or from the expectations that have been projected onto you? Pay attention to your silences, those moments when you swallow the urge to say something important, when you censor yourself before expressing, when you avoid conflicts not out of maturity, but out of fear of revealing something that doesn't fit the character. Every time you hold back to preserve an image, you abandon a piece of yourself. Observe your energy, not in the physical sense, but in the psychic sense. When you finish the day, do you feel drained or nourished? Do the activities that consume your hours feed you in some way, or do they just exhaust you? Living disconnected comes at a cost. You start to feel numb. Things lose color, intensity. What once moved you now goes unnoticed. And the worst part, you begin to accept this as normal. Another clear sign, your emotions become disproportionate or confusing. Small frustrations lead to exaggerated reactions, or on the contrary, moments that should move you pass without impact. This happens because when you distance yourself from the self, the unconscious starts to demand payment. Repressed emotions, ignored desires, neglected needs. All of this accumulates like underground pressure, and eventually it starts to leak through the cracks. And there's more. Your identity begins to dissolve. You feel like you're always adapting. A you at work, another with friends, another in the family. But none of these seem true. It's as if you're constantly trying to meet different versions of what others expect from you, without being able to access your own essence anymore. This also manifests in the difficulty of being alone, because silence becomes unbearable. It reveals what you're trying to avoid, the fact that you no longer know what moves you, what you truly want, what gives you meaning, and that is frightening. These are the symptoms of a life that is drifting away from its axis. They don't appear dramatically, but persist like a background pain, a constant restlessness, an impression that something is missing even when everything seems to be in place. And now that you know how to recognize the signs, the most important question arises: what to do with this? How to start listening to yourself again? How to rebuild a real connection with what you feel, think, and desire, without having to destroy the life you've built so far. This is what we will explore in the next part. It's time to talk about solutions, real practices, tools that you can apply now to begin the process of reconnection with yourself. Let's go together.